So welcome to Liviana, and welcome to this particular session entitled Postcapitalist Feminist Approaches to Commons and Commoning, Cases of Women's Collective Livelihood Practices in Rural India and Japan. So we will record these sessions, and if you have any concerns about us recording, please let Catherine, the director of know your concern. And please turn your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. And we invite participants to share comments and questions after two presentations. So I'm Chizu Sato, one of the co-author of the second paper, but the first author of the second paper is presenting. I'm chairing this session. So first, structure of these sessions. So we will have two papers presented first, each taking about 20 minutes. And afterwards, we take questions. And if you have questions and comments, please use the chats, and I will follow the chats. And I invite you to share those questions and the comments after two presentations. So first presentation is by Bhavya Chitranshi. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct. And so she's currently a PhD fellow at the Institute for Culture and Society at the Western Sydney University. She's the co-founder of an indigenous single women's collective, Economies in Odisha, India. For the last 7 years, in close collaboration with the collective, she has been doing engaged action research work on questions related to singleness, gender, sustainable agriculture, socio-economic transformation, and post-capitalist politics. So engaging in a collaborative process of ecologically sustainable agriculture with Ekanari Sangaran in her PhD work, she's exploring connections between indigenous perspective, knowledge practices, and a possible post-capitalist feminist practice in the rural context. So she will share her work today, and her paper is entitled The Caps of Post-Capitalist Feminist Praxis in Kondo Adivasi, Kondo Adivasi meaning indigenous, context, India. So Bhavya, you have 20 minutes to share your work. Floor is yours.
Yes, so I'll just is my screen visible?
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Chizu. In times of social isolation and distancing, I want to speak today on companionships, actually more of and about companionships, and reminisce with you all the beautiful friendships that carry us and teach us so much about solidarity, feminism, and commoning. For that reason, I want to open this presentation with powerful words of two friends from Ekanari Sangathan, a single women's collective in India. This is from the time when Rupai Pidanti and Barkini Pidanti, along with 38 other single women farmers in their village, were beginning to cultivate companionships based on their shared experience of singleness. Said Rupai, and I quote, no one believed my story, and no one ever understood my pain. I had no choice but to keep my sadness to myself. I could not explain it, so I never shared it with anyone. But now I share my feelings with my Sangho in the Sangathan. Sangho meaning friend, Sangathan meaning collective, because they believe what I say and they understand my pain. In Barkini's words, as single women, we face many problems. But when one has to work all day long to ensure 2 meals a day, you rarely find time to think about problems. We never thought it was important to pay attention to ourselves until we began sitting together in the Sangathan. Now we make time for ourselves and our Sangho. We listen to each other and take care of one another. Much like Barkini and Rupai's experience, between many such unshared, shared, silenced, and lost utterances of singleness, Ekanari Sangathan, a single women's collective, was formed by women from Bimaliguda and me in the year 2013. It led to a claiming of women's time and space for themselves in a way that although these women were single, but they were not alone anymore. Generally, a woman is regarded single not because she does not have family, friends, and acquaintances, but because she does not have a husband. The quote unquote absence of a husband in a woman's life begins to determine her gendered existence and identity. Particular to this Adivasi community, as in when women grow old and are unable to perform laboring activities and care work for the family, they are considered a mere burden and eventually left alone. In addition to fear of abandonment and loneliness, singleness also perpetuates socio-economic and cultural othering, many a times leading to domestic and sexual violence, perpetual states of financial and emotional insecurity, life devoid of relationships and care, and a huge work burden residing entirely on women's shoulder. Given this broad understanding, the meaning of singleness in the Sangathan extends to also include married women who experience singleness within marital setups. However, singleness in the way ENS members articulate it is not an experience of oppression alone. It is also a condition that has enabled women to lead a negotiated gendered existence, taking charge of their own lives and reimagining alternative forms of being in common. Spaces marked by companionships rather than those constituted within largely heteropatriarchal institution of marriage. The Sangathan, thus being cultivated as a collective of single friends, hosts a sense of companionship, solidarity, ethic of care, and a desire to survive well together. In addition to providing emotional and social support to each other, ENS members have also been rethinking and engaging with questions of socioeconomic sustenance, transformation, and collective well-being. It was during one such discussion back in 2016 where Arnalu Miniaka shared her dream of living and working with her friends in the Sangathan. As a separated single woman abandoned by her husband and natal family, Arnalu had been living alone for over 15 years. Her dream after forging the Sangathan was to live and farm with her Sanghos, look after each other, sing and dance in harmony, and be happy and free as single women. Arnalu's dream was somewhat realized when the Sangathan decided to lease a common plot of land and engage in collective agriculture process. The village community had little faith that women would manage to work together on a common land, since agriculture in Imaliguda was limited to farming on respective family lands or individually on encroached lands. Thus, this kind of coming together of women from different households to cultivate a common plot of land was first of its kind and a big step for the Sangathan. To prepare ourselves, we combine several reflections and discussions on Adivasi agricultural knowledge practice systems, cultural ethos of reciprocal laboring practices, and other non-capitalist processes within the community, with explorations of post-capitalist possibilities within the Sangathan. Drawing upon these discussions, the following processes formed the basis of reimagining a post-capitalist feminist praxis in the Sangathan. These are: 1. Understanding and exploring non-exploitative and non-capitalist forms of laboring, appropriation, distribution, and exchange in order to recreate new processes and practices in agriculture that could strengthen our commons and commoning practices. Second, engaging in ecologically sensitive ways of farming, ensuring ethical interaction between human and earth others. And third, cultivating ethical and collective subjectivities through collective action and creation. So far, we have engaged in 3 agriculture cycles wherein women perform various laboring activities based upon their age, availability, and capacity to labor. These include land preparation, procurement and treatment of seeds, sowing, transplanting, irrigation, facilities, facilitating irrigation, harvesting, thrashing, packaging, storing, and preservation. There's also immense amount of invisible care work, planning, and facilitation that goes into keeping the collective process going. Nevertheless, the joy of working together is witnessed throughout the process, especially in moments when women walk long distances together, sing in harmony as they work in the field, eat together under the mangrove, and laugh their hearts out during absolutely mandatory pika breaks. You can see the cigars, cigar looking pika, it's actually local rolled tobacco leaf. Um, their friendships flourish in these moments of being together. Many members in the Sangathan have time and again emphasized that it is primarily the joy of collective laboring that differentiates this work from farming alone on their family lands. They would often say, quote, "When we work together, the work feels so easy. It becomes difficult physically and emotionally when we have no one to share it with." Along with the production process, the appropriation and distribution of the produce is also done on shared basis. It is important to note here that not only all the women who labor share the produce equally, but also ENS members who for some reason do not manage to participate in the entire cycle of production process are given their share of produce. This ethic became part of Sangathan's practice from the very first year of this initiative when Dayama Pedenti, who had met with an accident at the beginning of agriculture cycle, was offered the share of produce. This was based on the understanding that this share was all the more crucial for her, considering she was unable to produce any means of subsistence that year. After shared distribution for self-consumption, the produce is sold in order to generate surplus for the Sangathan. A part of this surplus is used for agriculture production in the next cycle, and the remaining surplus is collectively appropriated to cater to social needs of the members. Also, local varieties used by the Sangathan members are procured and exchanged with other farmers on the basis of seed exchange rather than monetary transactions. In the mainstream developmental discourse in India, agriculture is regarded as an income generating activity that can be made profitable with capitalist interventions, modern techniques of farming, and global market linkages. These interventions cater to only individual farmers, thereby promoting self-interest and individual benefit above all. Contrary to this imagination, for the Adivasi women farmers in the Sangathan, agriculture is intimately tied to their life. It is not only a primary source of livelihood, rather their existence, food, culture, festivals, values, and diverse economic relations all depend upon agriculture. Agriculture is considered a form of life, engage in an ethical relationship with more than human companions. It is believed, and I quote, "You take from the earth only as much as you can return to her. You earn the right to eat when you sow the seeds." So I was being told by Jia Didi the exact same thing while I was learning to transplant. The land is considered a companion, much like any other single woman in the Sangathan, and thus care of the land is a crucial aspect of this process. Tulsi Pulaka explains ethical companionship with the land in the following words. "What we get after farming on the land is ours. Does not matter how much we get. That is up to Dharti Penu. Dharti Penu meaning the earth spirit, to decide. It depends on the care we give to her. When we care for her, she takes care of us in return. We do not ask how much. We thank Dharti Penu for what she has to offer. When we use chemicals for enhancing production, we poison the land as well as ourselves. Our health and well-being is tied to the health and well-being of the land. When we think too much about how much, we tend to move towards death. Death of the land, death of ourselves. But when we feel grateful for what we get from our land, we choose life." End quote. Thus, the benefits of ethical commoning in the Sangathan extend beyond the human members of ENS. In this regard, constant efforts are being made to move away from extractive inorganic farming to ecologically sensitive and sustainable farm practices in order to care for our commons. In spite of growing emphasis on monocropping, one of the same thing, cash crop, cultivation, and marketed hybrid seeds in the area, the Sangathan is taking responsibility to cultivate indigenous seed varieties of multiple food crops such as rice, local millets, and lentils. Moreover, natural and plant-based fertilizers and pesticides are prepared and used in place of marketed chemicals and harmful substances to sustain healthy life of humans and earth others. You can see that we are mixing sort of natural plants like neem and oil in the mud to create fertilizers in this picture below, down below. A lot of what we are learning and doing at ENS is made possible by our friends in India, Australia, and Latin America. Those in Delhi often visit us in Raigada to work and party with us every year. Some of them are also all here today. Plus our mentors at Basudha, a demonstration farm in Raigada, and our friends at Rijrang in Jharkhand provide constant inputs, knowledge, and agriculture-related support. Recently, we have also connected with Sangat, a leading feminist network in India, on their initiative called Rising Gardens. To end, these initiatives, experiments, and experiences of post-capitalist feminist enactment in ENS have led to a certain kind of reorientation of community and gender relations within Imaligura and with those outside. Here I'm reminded of Vandana Shiva's proposal to cultivate gardens of hope, where she says cultivating gardens can cultivate humanity. This suggestion makes me reflect on how processes of collective farming and nurturing can help us learn so much about being caring, being attentive, being patient, and ethical towards each other and earth others. Like the Sangathan members say, it teaches us gratitude, interdependence, appreciating what we have, and at the same time about also letting go. Thank you. Just stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Bhavya. Thank you for finishing before your 20 minutes. And so those of you who have comments to share and also questions to ask, please write down those comments and questions in the chat sections. I will invite you to share those after the second presentations. So I would like to move on to the second presentation by Nanako and me. So the second presentation is entitled Multi-Species Commoning in Aging Rural Japan, a Post-Capitalist Feminist Political Ecologies Perspective. And Nanako Nakamura is an early stage researcher at the Wageningen University in the Netherlands, and she's a member of WIGO ITN, Innovative Training Network of the EU Horizon 2020 program, and WIGO stands for Wellbeing, Ecology, Gender, and Community. And her PhD project is entitled The Politics of Care and Wellbeing in Community Economies, Elderly Women's Local Business in Rural Japan. And the work we are presenting today is co-authored also by me, and this is a preliminary idea, so we welcome comments and suggestions after the presentations. So Nanako, floor is yours.
Thanks, Chizu. I really appreciate some members for organizing this, and like everyone, and also for attending today this session. So I'm gonna stop my video and share screen. Hope it works, isn't it?
It's working. We need a sound, I guess.
Yeah, right. No. Oops. I'm going to be talking about a part of my PhD work based on the field work conducted in 2019, titled Multi-Species Commoning in Aging Rural Japan, with a post-capitalist feminist political ecology's perspective. I'm essentially interested in how people are holding up the situation of aging and depopulating rural communities and caring for each other, including humans and non-humans. I wanted to begin with the context of rural Japan. Since the 1960s, Japan has been experiencing aging and depopulation, more drastically happening in rural communities. People are migrating from rural to urban to look for education, jobs, social services, so on. Traditionally, everyday life in rural communities are connected to various natural resources. By managing them in a sustainable manner, individually and sometimes collectively as common resources. As communities have been aging and depopulating, those natural resources-related practices are difficult to be continued, and there are increasing number of abundant natural resources, and that brought about impoverished well-being of human and nature. In this line, many political interventions were implemented throughout the country. They aimed to Oops. It doesn't work, isn't it?
It was working.
Really?
Yes.
Hold on. I don't know what is going on.
What happened? Suddenly the chat kind of emerged and disrupted the sound, but it was working fine.
Sorry about that. Post-capitalist collective practices. Existing studies argued that rural women's local businesses visualize rural women and highlight empowered women, and therefore performed various practices. In their practices, they also showed attempt to fulfill social and community needs emerged from everyday life. With these remarks, I use a framework of post-capitalist feminist political ecology in my analytical examination. There are attempts made from post-capitalist scholars and feminist political economists and ecologists to enrich on theoretical grounds by echoing each other. Based on those studies, post-capitalist FPE tries to make more synthetic attempt to better understand everyday life by using post-capitalist framing and by understanding power dynamics enacted in its political and ecological embodiment. First, resonating feminist notion of care, post-capitalist FPE understands care as relational and everyday life-making practices. Also, it sees the process of care, which is commoning, showing differently performed commons in different contexts and locations. The centrality of performance is not only humans, but also non-human as others. Also drawing on post-structuralist thinking, it avoids fixed notion and framing. Instead, it tries to seek for other ways of thinking. It also takes into account the different emphasis made by post-capitalist and FPE approach. For example, multi-species community is what post-capitalist community economies sees as generated communities based on ethical negotiations and arrangements. Post-capitalist thinking also suggests insights of cross-generational practices and a different temporality. Whereas FPE explores the power dynamics with focus on gender, it shows differently embodied practices in socio-political economic interrelations. Also, emerging FPE threads argue subjectivity and entangled body and emotions in the humans and non-humans interactions. Now, I wanted to bring your attention to my research case, nonprofit organization Yume Mirai-Kunma. That is kind of an umbrella body of the women's local business and other practices. The foundation of the NPO was the pre-existed women's collectives organized by various communal groups, in which the women did practices to improve cooking skills and eating habits, farming, and so on. These practices at the women's local collectives were supported by the local and state government, reflected rising voices of women's empowerment at the national and international arena in the 1980s.
In 1988, as a part of community revitalization project, they started their local business by producing and selling local foods at the newly built roadside station, which was largely invested by using community assets, namely community forests. The motivations behind were to sell the products that these local women produced more than what they can consume, and by doing so to reinvigorate the local economy. Roadside station in Japan, by the way, I think it's a unique thing to Japanese. It offers not just basic functions like toilet or resting space, but also play more like recreational role and touristic role attached to the local economy. Based on this startup, Women's Local Business together with the Revitalization Project formed a NPO in 2000 to attend to emerging needs and challenges in the communities and to enhance well-being for various others. In the NPO practices, they offer various interacting activities among and between humans and nature. For instance, showing in the picture on your left, this is a cooking school. So they share knowledge commons by teaching how to make traditional foods with tourists and visitors. Also ecotourism at the terraced rice fields in the picture shown in the middle. The picture on the right down, they organize outside events such as a scarecrow contest, which everyone can join with handmade scarecrow and everyone can vote for the one which looks nice. After the event, actually those scarecrows are used on the rice fields. They also run meetings for old people in which they are doing many different activities to keep themselves physically, mentally, and socially fit. Those practices were developed through what Anatsin calls assemblages by embedding needs and challenges into their practices. In other words, they confront obstacles and deficiencies as resources rather than as barriers, as Gibson-Graham articulated. Those different forms of caring practices, I wanted to share some insights from commoning practices around buckwheat cultivation. So the buckwheat is called Soba in Japanese, which also means the buckwheat noodles. The noodles are one of the main key products of the women's business. And back in 1980, they also cultivated buckwheat supported by the agriculture department of the local municipality. Those supports intended to utilize abundant rice fields by introducing different crops to enhance land productivity and to diversify income opportunities. A cycle of soba cultivation starts from July by mowing and followed by sowing, harvesting, and threshing and flowering. And because the lands are scattered and located in different landscapes, consolidated management was required for the collective cultivation, and that made it more difficult than just cultivating buckwheat in the backyard. I use Community Economies Commons Identity Kit here to illustrate how their soba commoning practices look like. It focuses on access, use, benefit, care, responsibility, and how they are shared with others. So in this case, the access was shared with those women and also landowners. They used the land based on the negotiation with the landowners. The benefits were distributed to the community through women's local business, and also they made ecological environmental benefits by maintaining the landscape. Care for the fields was mainly performed by the women. The responsibility was assigned to the women's group and revitalization project. The land ownership was with landowners, but the harvested buckwheat belonged to the women's group. So the main player of this commoning was those women, and their assemblages were revolved around revitalization attempts with non-human others, as expressed in a municipality report. Quote, "We have a soil that nurtures soba plants and water that needs the soba noodles. Through the process, we learned that we rely on the rich nature we have here," unquote. Through the FPE lens, women's soba practices are highlighted as differently embodied nature and human practices. Also, they are reproduced multi-species community in a post-capitalist sense. However, regardless of these efforts, they stopped the soba cultivation after a few years. Here are some glimpses of why they stopped. One says, we were not able to fulfill the quality and the quantity required for producing the noodles. So for them, soba is a material resource and a precious product for their business. Through the soba commoning practices, the women grew their own subjectivity and became an economic actor. Also, another says, soba practices were so hard that they didn't come up with the thought of continuing it. And she told me some people were suffering from actual pain and inflammation on their joints. Also, being hit by typhoon during the harvesting seasons, their motivations was becoming very low. Although there were technical supports, it focused more on the utilization of abundant fields in the first place, rather than yields and refinement of the buckwheat or gender difficulties. After all, due to the lack of experience and knowledge, also the need to manage their livelihood practices and housework, they stopped the soba practices. Despite the hardship, they wished they could continue the soba cultivation. This was frequently expressed in the talk about current difficulties, such as decreasing customers' visit and declining profits and non-stop depopulation. To their rule, the discontinuity of soba cultivation seems to reduce the value of their products and not to be able to put the added value to their business. On the other hand, a local man who was not involved in the soba cultivation says, I wish those women's soba to be continuous. They don't have to use them, so buckwheat flour, for the noodle production, but it looks nice when the flowers are in bloom. And okasan-tachi, so meaning moms in Japanese, could say they are cultivating soba and at the same time making the noodles. From this statement, soba can also play a non-capitalist role or just be worth being there. Although his notion is not derived from actual commoning practices, including physical, emotional experiences that the women have gone through. But there are recognized certain values of soba commoning practices among the locals. But these values were not fully integrated into the agricultural supports and community revitalization scheme. So even though women were economically and socially empowered, it was not sufficient enough to continue their practices, which are related to gender, also aging, and gendered aging. Then I wonder what can be found after they stop their commoning practices. They are still producing soba noodles by using buckwheat flour produced in nearby regions or at least produced in Japan, which they think more reliable in terms of food security, quality, and also taste. But above all things, they try to use the materials that are what they wanted to eat by themselves. Some fields are still maintained as biophysical commons by some of the members, but in a more cultural manner, which is manageable even for aging women members. And they are still running cooking schools as knowledge commons. They compiled with the booklet about the traditional food practices as cultural commons. Also, the skills to organize themselves are applied to their business management as social commons. As you can see, there are remnant commons after the soba commoning, which probably would not look like the same as we can see today without previous women's efforts and challenges. To recap with the post-capitalist FPE lens, women's soba practices are shown as a socio-ecological relational process in which not only soba but also other different forms of commons are produced and reproduced. Care for those different commons is important, especially to capture the transformative aspects such as emerged, seized, and maintained commons. Above all, post-capitalist FPE illustrates that women and various others collectively cope with the situation and try to survive well together, that produce aging and gendered multi-species rural communities. In spite of an unforeseeable situation, I'm still planning to do some field work, and some questions are striking me. First, the role of the state. So can political intervention enhance post-capitalist multi-species commoning in aging and depopulating context particular? Also question about encounter with others, for example, younger generation and migrant locals and consumers, and how they generate well-being from these encounters. Thirdly, more multifaceted gender power dynamics, including men's practices. Lastly, drawing on FPE studies, emotional aspects of commoning practices in aging and depopulating context. Well, that's it from me. Thank you very much. Now I will pass you over to Chizu again.
Hello, do you hear me? Thank you, Nanako. With a small technical problems, we managed to finish the presentations. And now we have about 20 minutes, plenty of time to discuss the presentations. So I see 3 questions for Bhavya and 2 more coming. One for both Nanako and Bhavya, and another for Nanako. So those of you who have comments and questions, please type your comments and questions in the chat sections. So I would like to start with the question by Bianca. Bianca, can you turn on your microphone and ask your questions?
Hi, thanks, Bhavya, for your presentation. I really enjoyed it. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your own role in the collective, because you say you are involved in it since 7 years, and I'm just curious in what that means, like how often you're there, what kind of roles you're taking on, and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I often think about including that in the presentation, and somehow it just doesn't fit in the time frame. But so thanks for your question. I actually got involved with the women in the Sangathan when I was doing my master's MPhil in development practice in Ambedkar University, Delhi. So it's a practice-based program where we're supposed to be immersed in a village for about 11 months and plan an action research thesis where, so it was during that time, that 11 months, I was immersed in village Imali
Bhavya, can the connection is not good, I guess. Kathleen, can you hear Bhavya?
I don't know. Say something more. I didn't for a while there.
Bhavya, can you repeat your answer? We actually couldn't hear. It was frozen for a moment. Bhavya, can you repeat your answer?
Yeah, so I was just saying that I was immersed in village Maligura as part of my MPhil master's research, where we did sort of co-found this Sangathan at that point. And after that, I came back to Delhi and I was quite disillusioned being in the city, and I wanted to go back constantly. And the women were also constantly calling me because they were still sitting for the meetings and continuing the discussions that we had had. So then I spoke to people in Delhi in the program that I was in, and they sort of we pulled in some funding and things like that, and I went back and started working. So I practically live in Raigada whenever I am in India. And earlier I used to stay in the village. Now I have rented my own place, which I also have had for the last 5 years. Even when I was in Australia for my PhD, I kept that place because all of my stuff is there, and my friends keep visiting, and so it's in that capacity that I'm working, that I've been doing this work. And now the PhD has also given me the support to continue the work that I was doing. My role basically with the Sangathan is more of facilitating and keeping these conversations going and working with these women, and they come up with ideas, and mostly we just think about how can we get these things going. And but I'm also equally involved in the processes. Like we just finished one agriculture this year, the agriculture season, and so in farming, and I get my share of produce as well. The rice and whatever gets produced is also something that they share with me. So it's quite collaborative and it's quite intense in that sense. It's also a space where I think I have learned uh, almost everything about life, about relationships, about women friendships, and farming, of course, like agriculture. I knew nothing about that before going there. So yeah, I mean, it's actually like any other thing that I would have been doing in life. It's quite primary in that sense.
Thank you so much for elaborating.
All right. So we have Kath, who wants to ask Bhavya a question.
Yeah, I was interested, Bhavya, in that comment about how the women said it was easier when they worked together. And I'm just interested because, in a lot of rural communities, there are those moments when everybody does come together for harvesting or other things. There are those kind of rituals of reciprocal labor exchange and so on. But I'm wondering whether they're kind of focusing on what aspect is easier. Is it purely the physical, or is it other things as well? Just interested. And how would it compare to when they're working in a group, say with their family members doing harvesting, for instance, as a group,
Yeah, actually, this has gotten emphasized more and more, I think, as we have engaged in every cycle of agriculture. And there's, of course, physicality, like the physical aspect of working together, because the labor ring activities are quite hard and they get shared, and it takes lesser amount of time. So women also manage to focus on other things that they have to do. But I think the emotional aspect, which has come across many a times, is that like for women to find time to sit together in the setting such as in a village is quite hard. I mean, they're working for almost 14 to 16 hours a day. So to sit together and talk, and I mean, in the way that we meet friends is not exactly possible. So what I've been told many a times is that while they're working there, and even when I'm there, I can see that there's a lot of gossip going on. There's a lot of exchange of what's happening in whose house and how are they dealing with it. Or simply like women would tease each other and laugh at each other, or plan things that they have to do somewhere else later. So it's not only a space where you're sitting and sewing, or I mean bent and sewing, but there's a lot of conversation that happens in that line of work. And there's singing happening. There's somebody would start dancing, somebody would say something, and it would like the pika breaks are pretty great, because then at that point somebody would talk about somebody's eating habit, or somebody would tease somebody about something else. So there's a lot of laughter, there's a lot of joy. And a lot of my friends who visit and work with us during these times, it's also them that everybody starts teasing, or they would tease me that you don't know how to, you can only sit on a computer and write, nothing about bending and doing this work. So I think it's a very it's a very fun space in that time, where they forget a lot of miseries, a lot of problems that they otherwise face, which happens with me as well. Like before going to the field, I feel a lot of like, oh, there would be snakes, there would be this, there would be that. But once you're there, you just like, you feel quite nice and happy.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. We have Catherine who wants to ask Bhavya a question. Could you speak a bit loudly?
Is that better?
Yes, it's better
Yes,
with
sorry,
mic.
I forgot about that. There's negotiations over pie happening just at the other side of the bench, so I apologize for that. My question was about, so I was just really struck by the beauty of expression from the quotes of the women. And it was really lovely to see what they said and how they expressed their relationship with the land as this sort of mutual caring relationship. And I was struck that the English translation was the term interdependence. And of course, I don't know if you were able to come along yesterday, but Bianca is here and she's been leading this effort to think about interdependence and create a bit of a movement around it. So I'm interested in gathering translations of how that term shifts in languages, and I just wondered if you can tell us what the indigenous term is and perhaps what that translation means in that context.
Yeah, that's a great question actually. I don't know if interdependence is exactly what I can translate back to, but I'm just thinking phrases or meanings that have come up. So there are two languages. One is the state language, Oriya, which a few women know, and then there is the Kui language, the native language of the women. In the native language, there are often times that we hear them referring to interdependence as Ohoyana. So if you think that something is you're dependent on somebody for something, you call it Ohyana. And in Udiya, I think, I'm not sure, but it would be something like Nirbhar, dependent on something. Yeah. But I'm not very sure of what interdependence would actually translate as. But as close as I can think about, when you depend on someone or something, Ohyana is the term that we usually speak in Kui.
Okay, thank you. I might chase you up on that at
find
another
it out.
time.
Yeah, I'll find that out.
All right, thank you. I want to ensure also Nanako have time to answer two specific questions audience is asking, but I think Addison is saying Ignacio has questions related to Bhavya's presentations. And so before move on to Nanako's and the question Anisha has for both of you, I would like to invite Addison to share Ignacio's question.
Hi, we have two questions. Ignacio has a question and I have a question. Hi, Bhavya. nice to see you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Nanako, also for the presentation. Our question is, well, you're first. Okay, my question is whether there's a, similar to what Catherine asks, whether there's a word for commoning as well, where this concept of joint access. So I was curious if that was a term used locally.
And my question is whether they produce, all the produce is for self-consumption, or do they engage with markets? And also I would add if there's some form of financial commoning, let's say, or some form of pooling resources and so on.
I think I'll take a couple of minutes to think about the answer. And Anko, do you want to come in between and just like respond to the questions posed to you? I'll come back in the end.
Okay, so yeah, that's fine. So then I would like to invite Pierre. I don't know I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Pierre Prasino. She has a question for Nanako. Can you come forward?
Thank you, Chizu. I think I'm just sort of like interested in the whole cultivation process of the buckwheat, and because you mentioned about assemblage, and I'm really interested in how the buckwheat is actually participating in the process of its cultivation, whether it's cooperative or not in that sense, that would really require for the women to do hard work, as they've mentioned in one of your anecdotes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for raising that question. I also might touch upon the Catherine's question as well, because it's related to my question probably. So this, first of all, this agriculture supports the political intervention tended aimed at utilizing this unused abundant rice fields. So it doesn't necessarily be focusing on the productivity and monetary value and profit making crop. So people can just easily get the subsidy without gaining the profit out of it. But also they can plant profit making crops. But it also requires their labors and thinking about the old people. It's just difficult to manage them. So that is one option. People who can manage this situation, they can get money out of the land by using abundant land and also plus subsidy. And another possibility might be just to get a subsidy and without any profit making out of this land. So as this man said, as I presented, so just leave it and let it grow. And another option is just leave it and abundant rice field is just there. So there are so many unmanaged, unused rice fields in the agriculture around in these communities. So this agriculture support is actually not non-capitalist and not capitalist, rather more neoliberal policy. So it's opened up like collective and productive agriculture management. So in that sense, this women's collective practices is very unique. It's collective, so that makes their practices more difficult to manage on the different landscape and scattered rice fields. And also, this soba itself is a very unique thing. It's traditional Japanese food, but it's very general. So it's eaten all over the country. So this is not the traditional endemic thing for them, but they're trying to make them more endemic and unique thing for them. So in that process, they try to to go into the difficulty and hardship by themselves. And by looking at the commoning process, I could see the maybe not cooperative, but maybe collective identity was engendered from the commoning practices. So collective practices there, but it's more like not just materiality of soba itself and the noodle itself, but it's more like their identity. And this woman collective practices and this roadside station is now well known as soba production, mom's restaurant, so on. So yeah.
Pierre, is Nanako answer your question? And I'm looking at the time, 3 minutes to 10 here. And I would like for those of you who asked the question to get the answer. So we go over a bit, and those of you who can stay, please stay. So now I would like to invite Kath to ask Nanako a question.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I think you kind of maybe have answered it a little bit. I was just wondering whether the revitalization program that's been initiated by the government was very focused on women making something to sell, or is there room within that revitalization just to do the cultivation on this unused land to produce goods for themselves, for self-consumption? It kind of fits a little bit with the question that Ignacio asked of Bhavya as well. Like, and to what extent is that seen as successful if they just were to cultivate the Soba for themselves? And would that be as much work as trying to do it for selling? I just wondered about that. But I have a feeling you might have answered it in that question. I couldn't quite hear and follow it as well as I could, but we can take it up later on too. So thank you for the great presentation.
Looking at the time, perhaps we can have this conversation afterwards. Anisha, you have questions for both Bhavya and Nanako. Would you like to ask the question?
If we have time, I can.
Do we need to sharply end, Kathleen? Or we can go over a bit. And I would like to leave.
Oh, you can go over if people are willing to stay. It's fine.
Yeah. So those of you who can stay, please stay. And I would like Bhavya to come back and answer Allison's and Granacio's questions as well. Yes, Anisha, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentations. It's great to see you both again. And I think it was more present, Nanako, in your presentation where you talked about the physical strain and the difficulty of that were faced by some of the women in cultivating the buckwheat. And I'm sure that, Bhavya, you've encountered this as well in your context. It's hard work. And I'm wondering how different health challenges or other responsibilities that required the women to sort of maybe move in and out and not necessarily be constantly there all the time were navigated by the group, and in a sort of bigger context of questions about commoning and who participates and who's present and how do we hold space for people to move in and out depending on capacity. So I wondered if you could both speak a little bit to that in your contexts. Thanks so much.
Nanako, can you start?
Yeah, sure. Sorry about the noise. The people are cleaning up the road outside and gardening, but now it's stopped, so it went well now. Yeah, so practically, yeah, aging is a universal mission for everyone, no? Like, people cannot resist on it. Like, so those women are trying to handle by compromising their practices, like collaborating and making rotation and reduce their labor, so on. That is practical part, but also the difficulty is compromised with the like sharing the emotional challenges. So it doesn't reduce actual labor and volume of their work tasks, but the emotional ease make them continue their work. So that is one I could say, and yeah. Maybe I might ask for some help from Chizu if you have something. Yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking other things, so I'm a bit out of blue, sorry. So I don't have anything to add. All right, so Bhavya, can you share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, in the Sangathan, there's a lot of emphasis on sharing of labor dependent on capacity to perform. And there have been a lot of times that, you know, women are unwell or not, and because it's so strenuous, the work, that either if there is someone else in the family who can come on behalf of that person, then that happens, or otherwise, you know, there's no such thing that everybody has to participate equally in equal capacity. When women are unwell, they choose not to go on those days and stuff like that. And just connecting this and also saying to say something a little more on the aspect of health. There is a general system of looking after each other, which women have eventually cultivated, because being single, it's also very hard if you're not going out for work, then to ensure that you have food getting cooked for you, or medicines or stuff like that. So the Sangathan has sort of figured out a way to look after each other in times of health crises. And also that I think the first time we sold the produce after the first round of cultivation. So we do sell a certain amount, Ignacio, after keeping for self consumption. And so we calculate according to how many days and how much per person would need, and then that is kept for self consumption, and whatever is the surplus, the women are not directly linked to the market, but me and my friends, we carry some of the produce to Delhi and sell it among our circles of friends, because we don't produce in very large quantities. So we have been managing it in that way. But the money goes back to the Sangathan in the Sangathan's account. And when that money had come, actually there was a health fund that got created out of that, because health is very expensive. Healthcare is very expensive in Raigada. So, and women monthly, out of the money that they have, they start saving in the Sangathan. So we have created a health fund account in the Sangathan where women can draw money whenever they want for health purposes. Now women are also taking loans from that fund to sort of lease land or other activities, but it's largely for health purposes. So we do have a system of financial commoning. Like this year, we leased new plots of land. So we had to invest a lot of money in leasing that land, and a lot of money came from the Sangathan's account, the money that we had saved over the last 3 years. So those kinds of things we are still doing. As for Alison's question on commoning, can you explain the question a little, because the word for commoning or commons per se, especially social commons, in the way that the community translation for it is kui samaj, like kui community. So it's kui samaj for that particular word, but there was something about in your comment, something related to earth. So I was wondering, is there anything specific that you're sort of asking?
Oh, thank you, Bhavya. No, you had mentioned in your presentation, I think there was a term that you highlighted that referred to a woman, earth, right? I was just wondering if there was a word that expressed the action of coming together to create shared access. I'm just curious, because in our work we were also wondering that the other day. So I wondered if that was something that was a term that was available in the culture of the woman.
I'll find out. I can't think of it at the top of my head, because actually at this point I'm translating between 4 languages already. So
yeah, it's okay. I understand. Yeah, it was curiosity. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So when Nanako was responding to Anisha's, I was thinking, well, I should have asked Nanako to respond to Cass, and so I was spaced out from the particular discussion. Sorry about that. But I think Nanako could respond to Cass' questions, whether the women could use the money from the state for self-provisioning, or they needed to do some market-based activities. That was the requirement from the state or not. Nanako, can you respond?
Yeah, sure. So this revitalization project is not focusing on women's practices. It's more general to introduce diversified livelihood practices, profit-making practices, and to attract people from rural, from urban to rural. So more younger generation to move to this rural area by diversifying like job opportunities and economic possibilities. So they just tapped into this agricultural support to utilize this abundant rice fields, and also like this body of revitalization project is a community groups. So it's more like diverse members involved, men and forest owners and officers, so on. So these people are asking these women to join this revitalization project by like enhancing their original practice, which is more minor practices, just doing cooking, improvement and farming. So yes, they can use their finance and their budget for their self-provisioning, but it's not entire objective of the revitalization project, but they can just utilize their bigger body, like monster budget. And can I also add to the Anissa's question? Maybe I was thinking also intersectionality of gender and also aging. So this women's group, and at the same time they are aging, so mostly over 65 aged people. So their difficulties are like multifaceted, like gendered difficulties and also age difficulties. These difficulties are multiplied, and to invite other people, like people who are struggling with the like busy life in urban, for instance. So there are migrating people actually to find another living way in inspired by these women. So actually their women's difficulties invite other people to enhance original their practices and to support them, and their care aspects are also vice versa, so mutual. But maybe the practices itself and the functions of care might be different, but different in enacting and since synergizing each other's.
All right, that's a good word to end our session, synergizing. And so thank you so much for Bhavya and Nanako to present your engaged research with us. And thank you for the audience to stay longer over the time and sharing the comments and the questions with Bhavya and Nanako. And thank you for the organizer of Liviana to create this opportunity to space for us to engage together. So I would like to conclude the session. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chizu. Great to see you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah.
Thanks. So great to see you all.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
We could still be back in Sydney.
Bye, Pratik. Bye, Fatima. Bye to my friends in India.
Everybody.
Oh, I'm not managing to. Yeah.
All right. I'll see you in the morning early for Catherine.
Thank you, Kath.
Bye.
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 So I'm happy that we managed. I'm sorry for my silly chatting. But I'm happy that you both got the comments and questions and kind of, Bhavya, you don't use feminist political ecology, but I think you are actually embodying the perspective. So I'm happy to see the connections between what Nanako is doing and your work.
Yeah, actually, after planning this session and also reading the abstract and attending presentation, everything, I can see that I need to start reading it more seriously and bring it in the work.
Yeah, yeah. So the Wendy Harcourt, you know Wendy, right?
Yeah.
And
I've read Wendy's work. Yeah.
and we organize sessions at the conference or special issues in the journal or handbook or on the feminist political ecology. I would like you to also join these efforts as well, like linking community economies and the feminist political ecologies to push the conversations forward. I think your friend, no, Alison and Granacino are here.
Hi.
Nanako, can we go out of these conversations and have a quick debrief?
Yeah, but then not the Zoom, no?
Not the Zoom, via Skype also.
Just wanted to say bye. Sorry.
Yeah, bye.
Yes, we got knocked out.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Nanako. Thank you, Bhavya. Bye.
Thank you for joining and asking
Thanks
questions.
Yeah.